Today we will look at a world that is changing fast. New alliances and shifting powers are rewriting the rules of global economics and politics. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more updates. In global economics, a big change is happening. The BRICS nations are leading this shift. These countries are not just in the news. They are changing how finance, trade, and diplomacy work around the world. BRICS first started with 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Their goal was to grow their influence, create new chances for trade, and balance the power of the West. Over time, BRICS expanded and welcomed new members. Now Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iran, Ethiopia, the United Arab Emirates, and Indonesia are also part of it. This expansion has made BRICS a global force, not just a regional group. Together, BRICS now represents almost 40% of the world's GDP and a huge part of the world's population. This means massive economic and cultural power. Each country brings its own strengths and ideas. Together they are becoming a major player in world trade and finance. BRICS is more than just economics. The group also supports the nations of the Global South. They want to give more power to countries that were often ignored in international decisions. By working together, they challenge the power of the West, especially the United States. This is creating a more balanced world order. The rise of BRICS is changing global trade and diplomacy. The world is moving away from one single superpower. Now power is shared between many strong regions, each with its own goals and partnerships. This leads to an important question. What if BRICS put a 100% tariff on all US imports? The answer could change the future of global trade. It could create new alliances and bring huge shifts in the economy. Let's break this down. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. It makes foreign products more expensive. For example, a 25% tariff on a $20,000 car adds $5,000 to its price. Tariffs protect local industries by encouraging people to buy domestic products. They also bring money to the government and can be used in trade disputes. But tariffs can also create trade wars. In the end, both sides lose. So why would BRICS take such a big step? Because tensions with the US are growing. The US uses the dollar to hold power in global trade. BRICS countries see this as a weakness for them. That is why China and Russia are pushing for less dependence on the US dollar. They want to use their own currencies and new payment systems. BRICS wants a fairer financial world. A huge tariff on US imports could speed up this change. It would be a bold way to push back against US pressure. The stage is set for a very high-stakes confrontation. Imagine if the BRICS countries Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa put a 100% tariff on all American goods. The impact on the US economy would be massive. American exports would suddenly cost twice as much in some of the fastest-growing markets. That would make it almost impossible to compete. Factories that depend on exports could lose orders overnight. This would lead to layoffs and factory closures across the country. The shock would be felt everywhere, from Wall Street to Main Street. For US companies that buy materials or products from BRICS nations, costs would rise sharply. Prices of raw metals, electronics parts, and other key items would double. This would squeeze company profits and force tough choices. Some companies might look for new suppliers, but that could take months or even years. Alternatives might also be more costly or less reliable. Industries like electronics, automobiles, and heavy machinery would be hit the hardest. These sectors depend on global supply chains. Higher costs would make it harder to keep production running. Companies might cut output, delay new products, or even shut down operations. In the end, these higher costs would fall on American consumers. People would see higher prices on groceries, electronics, cars, and household goods. Families would feel their budgets stretched thin. The cost of living would rise across the board. Inflation would surge as businesses raise prices to cover expenses. The value of people's money would shrink. For many, it would feel like getting a sudden pay cut. Everyday items that were once affordable could become out of reach. Families would have to make tough choices about what to buy and what to skip. The Federal Reserve would face a hard decision. To fight inflation, it might raise interest rates sharply. But that could slow the economy and bring a recession. Higher interest rates would make loans for homes, cars, and education more expensive. Businesses would find it harder to borrow money for investment and growth. This would slow economic activity even more. The result could be a painful recession. Unemployment would rise. Businesses would close. Communities across America would feel the strain. Export-dependent companies would lose key markets. Manufacturing, farming, and technology would be hit the hardest. Millions of jobs could be at risk. Small businesses without resources could collapse quickly. Family farms and local factories might be destroyed, hurting entire communities. This would trigger even more job losses and economic decline in towns across the U.S. The impact would be both personal and widespread. But BRICS would not escape either. The U.S. would fight back with its own tariffs. This would hurt BRICS exports, especially in China and Brazil. Demand for BRICS goods in the U.S. would fall. That would mean factory closures and job losses in their countries too. Many BRICS industries rely on U.S. technology and parts. Losing access would slow their growth and innovation. Supply chains would break down. Costs for businesses and consumers in BRICS nations would rise. The economic pain would spread to both sides. In today's global world, hurting one major economy always hurts others too. The cost of this conflict would be very high for everyone. As trade tensions grow, world leaders are speaking out, each sharing their own views and concerns. Their words show the deep and growing divide between major global powers. Recent international meetings have been tense, with leaders trading sharp remarks and careful statements. The world is watching closely as these powerful nations try to navigate a fast-changing economic system. Old alliances are shifting, and past rules are being questioned. President Trump, after his 2024 election victory, has taken a hard position. He threatened big tariffs on any country that supports BRICS plans to move away from the US dollar. He says this is about national security and protecting America's power. Trump's message has been clear. The US will use its economic strength to defend its interests. He has called on allies to stand with America, saying the dollar's dominance is important for global stability. His administration warns that any effort to weaken the dollar will face a strong response. The U.S. position is firm. It will defend economic leadership at all costs, even if it risks diplomatic problems. American officials say the strength of the U.S. economy supports not only America's prosperity but also the global system. They argue that any threat to the dollar is a threat to global stability itself. On the other side, BRICS leaders have pushed back strongly. They criticize the U.S. for protectionism and demand a fairer, more inclusive global system. Their message is simple. The current order is outdated and does not serve most countries. BRICS leaders argue that a multipolar world is not only coming but also necessary for true fairness. They call for reforms to global institutions and more representation for rising economies. At a major summit in 2025, Brazil's President Lula gave a powerful speech. He said, "The world has changed. We don't want an emperor." His words spoke to many in the global south who feel the system favors only a few. Lula called for cooperation, respect, and a new way to manage global affairs. He urged nations to build a system that reflects today's world, not the past. BRICS leaders insist they do not want conflict. Their goal is to create an alternative system that gives more opportunities to everyone. They say their vision is about partnership and shared prosperity, not confrontation. They are working on new financial systems and trade deals to give developing nations stronger voices. Meanwhile, the language from both sides has become more intense. It reflects a real struggle over the future of the global order. Each side is digging in, and the world is seeing a major contest over who will set the rules of trade and finance in the years ahead. The outcome could change the balance of power for an entire generation. People, businesses, and governments everywhere are watching with concern. The decisions made in the coming months will have big consequences for economies, jobs, and international relations. The world is waiting to see what happens next. There are three possible outcomes. First, diplomacy. Both sides could come back to the table and make new trade agreements. This would require tough talks, but it could bring stability. Second, escalation. If talks fail, a full trade war could begin. Tariffs would grow, causing inflation, job losses, and even a global recession. The world could split into rival trade blocs, with supply chains permanently change. Globalization could end, replaced by economic fragmentation. The stakes are very high, and the outcome is still unclear. The choices made now will shape the world's economic future.